I am not shy about saying that the Big Ten Western Division is my favorite division in college football. I tout myself as being neutral across the board, as neutral as possible, but I will state it right here that the Big Ten Western Division is my favorite division. A lot of people call it boring, that there's just not exciting, flashy type programs and teams, but I just think it's fascinating because now we've got a situation where Brett Bielema is at Illinois, and I would have stated this before he took over the Illinois job, but take Illinois and Purdue out of the mix right now. I don't see them as serious contenders. That you got 5 teams. I would not be surprised if any one of the 5 teams won the division, but I do agree with David Greenshield, who's touting a Wisconsin-Iowa showdown for the Big Ten Western Division. And to extend on that point, I find it intriguing that you've got Spencer Petras, who got off to a slow start as Iowa lost its first 2 games, played much better down the stretch, outplayed Graham Mertz in the showdown against Wisconsin that Iowa won by 3 touchdowns, 28-7. To where Graham Mertz, I think everyone just assumed after he came out with guns blazing against Illinois with the 5 touchdowns, the 20 for 21 outing that, oh, this guy's a superstar. He's there. But if you look at the game-by-game performance, he really struggled down the stretch, and so did the Wisconsin offense. And the performance of those 2 guys may determine that division.
I agree with you on that. I do want to, and I want to debate you on this, but I do want to kind of confront you on this. You said who are the 2 teams that you said are not contenders in the Big Ten West?
Illinois and Purdue.
I'm assuming you just forgot that Nebraska's in the West.
I did not.
Oh,
maybe this Nebraska show I do every week is starting to wear on me.
You know, I want to transition. I'll transition a little bit then from the Iowa State rivalry to Nebraska, Iowa. I was listening to your show with Greg the other day, and he compared linebacker Garrett Nelson to Dick Butkus. If anybody forgot, they got to come back and look at. They got to go back and watch this tape. But no, I would be shocked to see Nebraska contend for the Big Ten West. And I would honestly, I would probably throw, and maybe I shouldn't do this, but I would probably sub Purdue out for Nebraska. I think I would be more surprised to see Nebraska win the West than I would be to see Purdue, because we've actually seen Purdue. We've actually seen Jeff Brom compete at a good level in the Big Ten. Scott Frost has proved nothing at Nebraska or at a Power 5 level. So I would challenge you a little bit on that, but I think everywhere else I would agree with. I don't think Minnesota. I think Minnesota is going to take a big step back. I don't. Again, it's hard to rate what happened last year with COVID, but you lose your star wide receiver. I think PJ Fleck. I don't know if he's wearing on people. I think he wore on a lot of people in the Big Ten as soon as he got hired. And I wonder if the row the boat type slogan is sort of wearing out in Minneapolis. I think the Big Ten is up for grabs for Iowa this year. I really do say that. And people if there's any loyal podcasters on here or podcast listeners on here who've listened to me for many years, they're probably going to call me a homer and say I say it every year. I think this year, honestly, though, given the landscape of the Big Ten, I just don't have a lot of faith in anybody besides Iowa and Wisconsin. Wisconsin took a big step back last year, but again, I think they were just ravaged by COVID. I mean, they were completely ravaged. So, if Graham Mertz can be decent, I think their running game will take a step forward. It took a huge step back last year. That should be that game should have huge implications, as it always does. And I hate to discount Pat Fitzgerald. I think everybody does it every year. I'm guilty of it myself. You kind of take them out of the conversation, and people got to remember that there's a lot of momentum with that program right now. And Pat Fitzgerald reportedly turned down some money this offseason to take his talents to the pros. I just, it's always a scary game, Iowa Northwestern, but I think the entire West should be on watch. So I think Minnesota, Purdue, Nebraska, Illinois, all down. But I would give those top three, Iowa, Wisconsin, and Northwestern, probably an equal chance at this point, in my estimation.
Yeah, I wasn't predicting a 5-team race. I was saying that outside of Illinois or Purdue, I would not be surprised with anybody else winning the Big Ten Western Division. And that does include Nebraska, even though they haven't shown us anything. I think that they've got the roster that I'm not saying that I'm not making a claim that their roster's loaded by any stretch, but it's on par from a talent perspective with Iowa and Wisconsin. But I do believe that Iowa, there's more to it than talent on the roster. There's, of course, just the process in play and the execution and the program that's been built at Iowa and Wisconsin have separated themselves to a certain extent. I'm not going to disparage Northwestern. Of course, they've won the division 2 of the last 3 years, but I think they may down cycle a bit this year. But, there are college football analysts out there, Corey, that do rank Pat Fitzgerald as the best coach in the Big Ten.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any complaints with that. Well, hey, I don't know how anybody could argue with it.
Even above Ryan Day.
Well, I mean, everybody wins at Ohio State. I know that's easy to say, but I'm not taking anything away from Ryan Day. He's been terrific. But I will say, as far as the Nebraska conversation is concerned, and I'll just leave it at this. And I know for some reason, there's a lot of animosity between Iowa and Nebraska fans. But I know, again, being here in Ames, there was a lot of animosity between Iowa State and Nebraska fans when Nebraska was in the Big 12. So I think this is sort of sometimes Nebraska fans just get on people's nerves. In fact, my roommate, when I first moved to Ames years ago, my roommate was from Omaha, or actually from Lincoln, and was a huge Nebraska fan. So I have nothing against Nebraska fans, just for the record. But I think we have to see Nebraska. You have to take steps forward. We've got to see them actually become bowl eligible. I mean, we actually have to see them make a bowl game, I think, before we're talking Big Ten West Championship. And Mark, I know you mentioned talent, and I haven't really delved into talent rankings across the Big Ten as of yet for this coming season. But would you rate Nebraska's talent ranking in line with Iowa or slightly above Iowa? And Wisconsin, I guess, throw them in the mix.
The previous comment I made was based solely on recruiting rankings, that the recruiting rankings are similar, if not Nebraska is better than the other two over a 4-year average on the roster.
I asked that question because the wide gap right now in development between Wisconsin, Iowa, Northwestern, and Nebraska is so wide. I think Nebraska would have to, at this point, until Scott Frost and that coaching staff can prove that they can become. I know fans don't want to accept that. I don't think in Lincoln that they need to be a developmental school, but until they can prove that they've got to do either one thing. They've either got to close the gap in development, or they've got to really, really exceed expectations on the recruiting landscape. And maybe, again, I don't follow Nebraska recruiting like I'm sure you do, but I don't think the gap between Nebraska and then those other 3 schools is wide enough in recruiting to make up for the lack of gap, the gap that we see with Iowa, Wisconsin, Northwestern in development. That would just be my 2 cents on it. But I don't mean to turn this into a Nebraska show.
Well, it may do my channel some good if I would do some more crossover conversations and, for example, bring you over onto the Nebraska channel to call those Nebraska fans out. That would be phenomenal.
I may lose subscribers if we do that, Mark.
You would lose them. I would gain them.
You would gain them. Okay. I'll be the sacrificial lamb.
That's it. There were 3 stats as we leave Nebraska alone as soon as I mentioned this that I just thought were startling concerning Nebraska football. And I wondered how they possibly won 3 games last year out of 8, because they had one of the 5 worst turnover rates in the country offensively. They had one of the 5 or 10 worst turnover rates in the nation defensively. So you're turning the ball over offensively. you're not getting turnovers defensively. Okay. And we know that turnovers kill a game because every time you turn over the ball, unless it's at the 50-yard line, even that's not a good thing, of course, you're either denying yourself a scoring opportunity or you're basically handing one to the opposition. And then on top of that, Nebraska was the worst in the nation in explosive pass plays. They only had 4 pass plays go over 30 yards last year. So you turn the ball over, you can't get the opposition to turn it over, and you've got no explosive plays in the passing game. How do you win anything?
Well, they're winning the line of scrimmage, apparently. I mean, that's the only thing
exactly.
Left, right?
That was my conclusion. You must be beating them up on most of the plays, but the big plays are going against you, but you're beating them up front. Exactly. That was my conclusion.
I think that's fair. So I think theoretically, looking at it from a Nebraska standpoint, you could argue that they're not far off. But I think those turnover woes, and again, I'd have to look back at past season stats. I think those turnover woes really stretch back into the Bo Pelini era. Tommy Armstrong was, I mean, his turnover issues were well documented. So I don't think this is just a Scott Frost problem. I don't know if you can call it a culture problem. I think theoretically the culture changed or shifted, from the Bo Pelini era to the Riley era to the Frost era. But I think the turnover issue has been an issue throughout the line of scrimmage. I will say this: if you go back and watch that game last year, and I'm sure you remember that game.
Oh yeah.
Iowa didn't dominate. I mean, Iowa dominated a lot of teams last year on the ground. That was a weird game, and it kind of always is. So it's hard to rate. But I don't remember Iowa dominating that game on the ground like they did Minnesota, Michigan State. I just thought that was a little bit peculiar. And now, given those season stats for Nebraska that you threw out, I think that makes more sense. So yeah, I mean, there may be more development along the line. I think. I don't know. I guess my big thing is, how do you have, if they are winning the line of scrimmage like those stats would have you believe, why are there issues with your snapper constantly throwing the ball above your quarterback's head? Why is that an issue? I mean, that
the last week of the season, this isn't in week 1 either.
It just, to me, and then you have your head coach basically, trying to throw a 21-year veteran head coach who's been in the Big Ten this entire time, throwing his staff under the bus for clapping. I don't know. If the development, because I think you would agree with this, development, especially at this level, it has to be founded on discipline, and that's exactly what Kirk Ferentz and this staff has done. I think Barry Alvarez and every head coach he's had in Wisconsin, he's instilled that same discipline, on both sides of the ball. But in order to develop guys, you have to have discipline. So it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense how Nebraska has been able to, how they were able to last year win the line of scrimmage. Like, again, those stats would make you believe, and yet not be able to rein in turnovers, not be able to get your snapper to snap the ball to your quarterback. It just seems odd to me. And I think my biggest question with Nebraska since the Scott Frost era began was discipline and culture. To me, there's been a lot of trash talk. There's been a lot of, even from day one, that the Big Ten was going to have to change for them. That's just, I don't think that's going to cut it. And if you're going to want to become that developmental program, you're just not going to get by that way. So, but you're more of an expert than I am on it, Mark. So I think Nebraska fans will be happy to hear that they're at least in the conversation this year. And I would definitely put them above Illinois. For the record, I would definitely put them above Illinois. And probably I have a hard time going further than that, but definitely above Illinois. And again, I don't have much faith in Minnesota this year either.
6th place in the Big Ten at Western Division, according to Corey, something in that range for Nebraska.
I think that's fair. And I think is that a step up from last year?
I don't think so. They were 3-5 last year's.
Illinois,
yeah,
that's the thing. And so I go back to your remarks about theoretically them dominating inside and winning plays. How much do you attribute that to a change in culture and a change in program development, or do you attribute it more to COVID did a lot of crazy things for a lot of teams, and it was the result of, Penn State, Minnesota. I don't know if they played. I think they did play Penn State last year, right? Penn State, Minnesota, all these other teams having down years. I think we're going to have to see that again to be able to really take stock in it.